If you are self-employed and work from home, you have surely asked yourself at some point whether you actually need to register your self-employment at your home. Is the location of your self-employment mandatory at your home? Because that also signifies that you then are required to provide this address, such as in the imprint or on invoices, generally in all contractual agreements, always publishing your private address, for example. And many people simply don't feel comfortable with that because you live there privately, maybe your family lives there too, and you might not want this address to be public. And that's why I actually keep getting the question, can I register my self-employment somewhere else? And in this video, we will answer exactly this question. And before we dive into the content of this video, a big thank you to Business Address Bunte. Firstly, you will find a lot of information on the whole topic at geschäftsanschrift.de. Can I actually register somewhere else? You can also actually register your business address there. And Geschäftsanschrift.de takes care of all the regulatory aspects, which we will discuss shortly. And if you click on the first link in the video description and enter the code STURFIT50, you will save 50% on your business address for the first 3 months. And with that, we come to the very central question. Is it actually legal to register your self-employment somewhere else? Obviously, one can say yes now because there are clearly providers like Geschäftsanschrift.de, but the answer to this question is not just a simple yes or no, because there are different gradations. For example, you can simply rent a separate office and then go there every day and sit there and work there. Then it is, of course, completely logical that you can also register your self-employment there. You can register, and then you basically have 2 locations. One is your residence and the other is your business location. And you simply handle all your business matters, including taxes and business registration, through your business location. And the other extreme is just a mailbox. So you simply rent a mailbox somewhere and all your mail just ends up there. And you are sitting somewhere else entirely, never at that location. And there's no one else there either, just that one mailbox. And not without reason do such pure mailbox companies have a relatively shady image. Because a mere mailbox or a simple post office box is not sufficient. What you need is a serviceable address. It doesn't have to be a full office. But it must be an address where you can naturally receive mail and where you can also receive official mail. And official mail includes, for example, tax office letters, but also correspondence with courts, such as a district court, for example, or a bailiff. And the bailiff is not satisfied with just a simple mailbox. This means you need an address where there is actually a person present. So a real person who can accept letters on your behalf, receive packages, but who can also, for example, receive the bailiff. And then an address is capable of receiving legal documents. And if this address is capable of receiving legal documents, then you can actually officially use this address as the registered office of your self-employment. For you, this means that if you do not want to register your self-employment at home and not your private address in the imprint, for example, then you should research providers who offer an address capable of receiving legal documents. This is often the case, for example, in startup centers or co-working spaces, because there you can actually go and work, and there is often someone at the reception. And this person receives all the mail anyway. And there is the entire office infrastructure that you can theoretically use, which you don't actually have to use in practice, but you can use it. And in such an office infrastructure, you are allowed to register your self-employment. And registering means that you specify this address as the location of your self-employment when registering your business. This means that your residence and your business location are separate, and you have a location for your self-employment. And you actually use this self-employment location everywhere you need to provide your official business address. For example, on your invoices, in contracts, in the business registration, or in the imprint. This means that with such an address, you can ensure that your private address truly remains private. In detail, a few questions arise with such arrangements. For example, which tax office is actually responsible for me now? Or where exactly do I register? My business, where I live, or where I am self-employed? And which type of tax do I actually have to pay? Where do I send my tax return? And so on. And we will go through this now, step by step together. The simplest thing is the business registration or the business itself. The business registration is always done in the responsible municipality or city. And responsible means responsible for the location of your self-employment. That means you simply register your business where you have registered your self-employment. Let's make an example. I live in Berlin, but would now like to start my own business in Potsdam. register. And then I simply register in Potsdam with my business. Honestly, my private address is not really of interest to the business. It's different with the tax office. You do the tax office registration of your self-employment with the questionnaire for tax registration. If you're not exactly sure how to fill out this questionnaire, take a look up here on the right. I'll link you to a click-for-click tutorial. There, I go through the entire form in Elster Online, step by step. And when you look at this form, you notice that you have to provide addresses incredibly often. And the addresses you need to provide in the questionnaire for tax registration include, for example, your address. And by your address, it means your private residential address. And there, you simply enter your private address. This doesn't mean you have to use it publicly anywhere afterward, but the tax office needs to know where you live, where your residence is, because income tax, for example, is a personal tax and it is paid where you reside, where you have your residence. However, you will also be asked in this questionnaire for tax registration where the location of your self-employment is. And that's where your business address comes into play. That means you then provide the address of your business location, your co-working space, your office, and so on. This means it can also be a different municipality. And then you are basically done, if you actually work there. However, since you, at least when you book such an online service, usually do not work on site, you also need to provide the location of the management. This means the tax office wants to know not only where your self-employment is based, but also where the actual work is being done. And the location of the management would then again be your private address, at least if you work from home. And this generally means that you handle all your types of taxes, all your tax returns at your home. This means that your residential tax office is responsible for you, and you should communicate this transparently to the tax office when registering your self-employment. Or if you later decide on such a business address, then you should of course report this later. The tax office must have absolute transparency on this. The issue is quite common. The trade tax, because you pay the trade tax in the municipality where you conduct your self-employment. And here the question arises, what is conducting? Having the registered office or actually performing the work? And here it is about the actual work you perform. This means if you have a registered office somewhere and perform the actual work elsewhere, at your home for example, you pay the trade tax from your place of residence, even if your official address is elsewhere. And this is truly my sincere, urgent appeal. Be transparent with the tax office. In my professional experience, especially in collaboration with clients, I've heard many stories. The tax office actually visits regularly your business address if they have the impression that you are never there. And then this can indeed lead to the assumption that you only have a shell company or just a business address to somehow save or evade trade tax. And you certainly don't want to have a tax evasion procedure on your hands. If I understand you correctly, it's about not wanting your private address to be public. And that's not a problem at all, as long as you handle it cleanly with the tax office and the tax registration and declaration. And with that, I also want to take the wind out of the sails of those who want to rent a virtual business address or a mailbox just to save on taxes. In the end, that won't work because you always pay the business tax where you actually generate the value. This means that if you now choose any municipality in Germany that has a relatively low business tax rate, you won't save any taxes because you will then have to pay the business tax at your place of residence or where you actually work. By the way, it's also not possible to register your company headquarters somewhere in Malta, Cyprus, or Dubai and actually sit in a home office in Germany and work from there. Then, even though you have established a company somewhere abroad, you must actually pay your taxes where you are, where you create value. And if that happens to be Berlin, then you will still pay your taxes in Germany. And then your foreign incorporation and foreign headquarters are practically of no benefit to you. A business address and such a business address service do not help you save taxes. However, it does offer benefits for privacy and of course for professionalism. If you have an official business location there, you might be able to afford something more representative. And then there's a person who takes care of your mail and possibly also greets your guests if you have an appointment there, for example. And indeed, for exactly these reasons, I have also used such providers very regularly in the past. And from my perspective, I can also absolutely recommend it. For me personally, a huge advantage of such business addresses was that I didn't have to deal with paper because these services receive your mail and scan it for you. That means I simply receive all my mail via email, and I actually prefer that to receiving 1 or 2 letters per week. that I then have to digitize myself and store online. Honestly, it was always easier for my organization when I received everything I got via email. That was it, via mail that arrived simply from the business address provider, and everything else comes via email anyway. This means that for digitization, such a business address is actually a pretty good thing. And with that, we come to the disadvantages of such business addresses, co-working spaces, and so on. And those are primarily the costs. Registering your self-employment at your home costs nothing at all. That means you can simply do it. No additional costs arise from it. You receive your mail simply at home. You use your private address everywhere. Absolutely no problem at all. These providers cost money. What a surprise. That's the business model to offer such addresses. And in the past, that was quite expensive. So the first time I booked such a service, I believe I paid 90 euros a month. That means it was definitely an amount I felt in my self-employment when I first had to pay around 1,000 euros per year just to have a different address. Of course, it's a matter of weighing whether it's worth it to you. But I must also say that in recent years it has become significantly cheaper. I already mentioned that this video was created in collaboration with Geschäftsanschrift.de. And Geschäftsanschrift.de starts at 29 euros per month. And with our partner code, you save 50% in the first 3 months. And if I didn't have my own office, where I sit and work every day, I would probably choose such a service. Geschäftsanschrift.de offers you a business address at a representative location. This is the Denkwerk in Herford. There, you can register your business address. Your mail is received there and then forwarded to you. And you can then use this address everywhere in the imprint, on your invoices, and so on. And then your official business location is at the Denkwerk in Herford. So, if you want to start a business and don't want to use your private address publicly, then click the first link in the video description below. And if you have questions about the whole topic, business address or location or jurisdiction of the tax office for business registration. And if you still have questions about these topics, feel free to leave a comment under this video and I'll be happy to help you further. Otherwise, feel free to click here to go to Geschäftsanschrift or click here for another video or simply here for yet another video.